Good morning. Thank you for welcoming me this morning to talk about peace, to share with you about peace. Well, I must say, I had no idea how big a subject peace would be once I began looking at it. I'm glad that I had focused in my little introduction on the aspect of peace that is about as within, so without. And from my perspective, the utter impossibility of having any kind of peace in the external world, however you perceive that, until there is an internal experience of peace, frankly, whatever that might mean to you. Even that became a big topic, because then I thought, well, I'll look up the definition of peace. And I won't take you there, but as you can imagine, we can talk about peace from all kinds of perspectives and angles and perceptions. But as I was thinking, I realized that for me, it's really important to remember that peace is not the absence of violence. Peace is not the absence of violence. Peace is a state of being. My perception is that peace is an awareness of a conscious connection with another, whether the other is creator, whatever word you use for that, energy, source, God, whatever word you use, that is what peace is, that is about. It's not even finding it. We can't find it, we can't seek it. It's about allowing it, inviting it. So I wondered, since peace is individual and not competitive, what is peace to you? We hear things like, go in peace, or may he or she rest in peace. We hear peace be with you at the end of some church services that we're asked to share with others that we're sitting next to. Some people refer to Jesus as the Prince of Peace, the peace of God which passeth understanding. I mean, we have a plethora of thoughts about peace. We hope for a peaceful death. Do we have a peaceful or not peaceful life? So, as peace is individual, as I said, what is peace to you? I really would like you to just kind of go within while I'm speaking, if you can, and imagine, does peace for you have a color? Does it have a shape? Is it an image? Is it a sound? Do you know when you are in peace or at peace, or is it more about knowing when you are not that grabs our attention? So where does peace live? I would like to remind you, I'm trusting we all know this, but I'd like to remind you that peace does not live here. It is not a mental exercise. It is not an intellectual exercise. But where in you does it live? Often people point to their heart. Is that where peace lives for you? Or do you trust your gut feelings and that's where you experience peace? We all have our own, which is lovely and daunting at the same time. So if we begin with internal peace, an awareness of a conscious connection with Creator or Source, then is it quietness for you? Is it stillness or contentment? Is it calm? Is it bliss? Is it fulfillment or tranquility? As this is an exploration, those are some of the things I would like you to consider for yourself. Can it be trust? Can peace be trust? What is it that interrupts peace? Is it judgment of self, of others? Is it anxiety, worry, fear, that very long list of possibilities that gets our attention? Is it anger? Again, what is peace to you and what interrupts your peace? Is it discouragement or sadness? Is it thoughts of yesterday? Is it thoughts about tomorrow? Because, as we often hear, it seems to me these days, is that everything is about now. So peace is now. Peace is now. Peace is not yesterday, even though you may have experienced it yesterday. Certainly not tomorrow. Can you be in your now with your peace? I was thinking about the oxymoron that people believe that we can fight for peace. And where does that take us? Exactly. Can we find the peace within without expecting it to express in an external outward way? Can you even imagine being in war in some capacity, whether it's this world war or country-to-country war or some community warfare or some family warfare or some internal warfare? Can you imagine being in that place of, quote, warfare and still being at peace? Because that warfare is external to us. What we have is what we have inside. Can we be in that place of contentment, my word, trust, movement forward into the next and the next, no matter what's going on around us, and carry calm, contentment, fulfillment, trust? Those are my words. I'm trusting that you have some too. Can we say yes to peace, no matter what is evident to our physical senses? We hear about war on the news. We see evidence of it on the television, whether it's international or national or community. We have what we would call physical evidence of that, which feeds the intellect, which is not where peace lives. As we hear and see those things with our physical eyes and our physical ears, can we still hold peace within? Can we still trust that we are always connected to Source? To me, that is the antidote to this idea of the oxymorons that we were talking about of fighting for peace. Peace is being. As I said, it's a state of being. So can we be in it no matter what's going on? Tall order? You bet. Worth our effort and our energy and our inviting, our willingness to say yes? I think so. There's a verse, I was reminded, Linda, I don't often quote the Bible either, and I'm not quoting it well, I'm sure, but there's a verse that says something about, thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. Well, for me, that reinforces the idea of peace and as trust. Where does our mind, this part that I'm talking about, intellect, stay? Does it insist on believing the physical evidence of unpeace or non-peace, or what we would call struggle or strife or war or violence? Can we live? Can I live? Can we, as a in this moment, this group, live in the trust that no matter what's going on in that external world is a reflection of what's going on internally for people, the world, consciousness, whatever word you want to use for that? There truly is no way for there to be an external evidence of peace if we're not doing hopefully more and more consciously, more and more willingly, more and more connectedly to whatever source word you would like to use, creator, source, energy, God. So the more time, even though it's non-time, that you, I, we are able to spend with that peace, what we call that peaceful place, the more evidence from my perspective that we will see outside of that, outside of us, in our external world. Whether that's in our own homes, it certainly seems to have to start with our own life. If our own life is consumed with warfare between spouses or children or neighbors a little bit out, or schools, or whatever that might look like, then the less chance there is to see that as it goes out. But as we spend it here, wherever you perceive it lives within, then the more we will see it out. It's like that ripple effect that we hear about in so many ways. It has to go out, but it does not. It will not ever come in. Do you see that? It just makes sense to me, and even in an intellectually logical way. It has to start here. So I want you to imagine, if you can, Mary made a reference to my son Josh, who died at 17, and I trust it's safe to speak it here. He and I have had some wonderful communications since his passing. And one of the things that he shared with me that I carry all the time is that he said, there always has to be a balance, Mom. There always has to be a balance. So I want to take that idea into this peace place today. I want you to think about a fulcrum. That fulcrum at the center of the seesaw, if you will. And at one end of this spectrum we have unpeace or violence or war or whatever word that comes to you. And the other end of that seesaw or plank, I think of, the other side that has to have a balance would be what we would call peace. Is everybody with me on that? And we may think that the more energy and effort and desire and yearning and maybe even prayer that we put into that peace place, the more possibility there is of peace. And yet, I trust Josh, there has to be a balance, Mom. So the more of us who want to come over here are actually insisting that more have to come over here. Do you see that? I mean, that to me is just fascinating. So, where do we live? Do we not encourage or desire or pray for peace? I don't think that's the answer, but I want you to imagine living as the fulcrum. That to me is the unattached place, to be the fulcrum that holds it all up without having to participate in either side. Because once we choose a side, we are participating in the other side, and we truly are then fighting for peace, which doesn't work. To be the fulcrum. Actually, I'd like you to imagine that not just in terms of peace, but in everything in your life. Whether, I mean, and you know, there are people who are called to a cause. Absolutely, they trust that with their very being, that they're being called to a cause. That's absolutely maybe their role, their purpose, their contract with the source. I'm not arguing with that, but I'm wondering if those of you who don't feel called to the cause can imagine being the fulcrum so that it doesn't have to add someone to the other side. It is there again. There always has to be a balance, Mom. I mean, those are words that I hold very dear and trust completely. I want you to imagine, too, from subsequent conversations, that has to do with the balance on the planet. There is balance on the planet, even though we can't see it. When it becomes off balance, you know, and this isn't the topic today, but I do want to just mention that. We can't be on the planet without this balance of gravity and environment and all these things. So if there isn't a balance, then what, we fall off the planet? Which in some ways, if you can kind of expand to that, that is what happens when we get into war, or we insist on peace, or we think we can, quote, fight for peace. I look forward to sharing about some of this later if you want to stop and talk. I have a quote from, and forgive me, I can't pronounce his name. Maybe somebody here can help me. Thich Nhat Hanh. Anybody know the name, how to say it correctly? That sounds close, thank you. Okay. And I love it that I just happened to see this as things happen. We are here to awaken from the illusion of our separateness. Right? I hear that in all areas and avenues of spiritual study these days, whether it's the Course in Miracles, the impersonal life, the Bible, obviously, to awaken from the illusion of separateness that, from my perspective, is about this connection that I'm talking about. So, how do we stay connected? How do we remember that we are truly connected? Can we trust that we are truly connected? Always. No matter what the physical evidence is trying to tell us. Do you have something in your world, in your life, in your daily practice, whatever makes sense to you about that, that helps you remember that you are indeed connected all of the time? Is it a meditation? Is it a thought? Is it lighting a candle? I've shared this in my workshop for years, that for me, for a long time, it was this thought: thou art with me. Thunk. There I was. That, to me, it was a conscious awareness of connection with Source, no matter what was going on in the outside external world. It took me right wherever that lives. I would encourage all of us to find something that is connected to our connection, our sense of peace, that we can kind of have it as wallpaper back here all the time. Present, available, helpful, conscious connection with that peace. I want to come back just a moment to the idea of peace as trust. In our world, in our external world right now, it seems to me that it's very difficult to trust that everything that is happening is purposeful. A lot of really hard things happening. And yet, that is my goal, is to remember that everything is purposeful. It's a reminder, if you will, that there is always a balance. Whether we want to go to that old cliche about, making lemonade out of lemons or not, I think that's a little simplistic and becomes a cliche then that we don't think about it. We just dish it off to that. But as hard as things are, to be able to trust that there is a purpose behind it, there is a gift within it, that to me speaks balance. This really hard thing is happening. Something really important, purposeful, and gift-giving creates the balance. Moving attention from the really hard thing into looking for the gift seems to be purposeful in itself, just to shift the awareness. And then possibly becoming the fulcrum of that imbalance into a balance. How are you doing, Mary? Oh, perfect. So I want to talk about how peace is represented in our world. Maybe we see a peace symbol that became popular during in Vietnam War, and we see it on a mug or a T-shirt or something. Is that what do you think when you see that? Does that mean peace to you? Or does it remind you of another time in our world, an era? I think of that as it's kind of like that cliche thing. I mean, we can look at it, we can say we believe in the concept of that. Do we have to fight for that? I think of the struggle of the Vietnam War movement era, the difficulty of that. And again, did that have to create a balance? Because we had these people who were not, in our culture, were not supposed to be anti-American or unpatriotic. And yet this is what was happening at that time. So we created this, again, this imbalance that had to be balanced out. So what do you do? Again, a quick reminder about what is it that you do to help yourself allow, invite, say yes to an internal peace that then becomes how and where you live. Can you live from that place? Offer it out so that it can have that ripple effect. In the last few weeks, I've been very present with this idea, this concept, this truism, as I like to call it, that is obvious to me in this morning with you all, and is obvious to me in my work with others and with myself, is this idea of what us means. You, us. What does it mean? For me, it is about this connecting moment. So in this moment, you and I are an us. You and I are an us. I don't know you. It doesn't matter. Do you see? So if we can trust that in every usness, if you will, there is gift. I trust us. And then this is a prayer place for me. So if I knew your name, I would say, I trust us, and say your name. I would say, I love us, Miles. This is not personal. This is about the connection in the moment. I celebrate us, Roy. I see you getting it. Okay. I would like you to consider that is a peace place. Part of my prayer work right now is to be able to, in my waking, in my quiet time in the morning, remember, I trust us, God. I trust us, body. This can be as expansive or as inclusive and small as you need it to be or need it in a moment to be. But I would like to offer it as a way of possibly connecting to this peace place. I thank us.
Shall we come together for a little more discussion with Victoria?
First of all, thank you. That got me really thinking and feeling. And I wish I had taken a pencil to paper earlier on when you were talking, because I'd forgotten some of the things that came up for me. But he talked about the fulcrum, and I thought of neutrality. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I thought of the Kung Fu series, which I think of every time I think of peace. I think of David Carradine as White Tin Cane when I was young, watching the TV series Kung Fu, and I thought about this idea that, well, can you be in the war and still be at peace? And what he did, usually as no other option, is defended himself when he had to. And so I think about that, defend. Right. But at last cost, the last option. Right. Act out in defense. And I wonder what you think about that.
Yes, thank you so much. So the question, and I think martial arts people who know about that would say that has to come from the peace within to be able to do what they do, like whatever the martial art is. I mean, they talk about that. But you've also triggered another subject that I didn't know we would go to today. But I trust in the system of
contract or deal or agreement that I trust all, even though others may not either know about it or agree with me, that we have all signed contracts before we came to the planet. So ultimately, I trust that whoever has to get into that position that you're talking about, if it comes to that, however you see that in some hierarchical escalation of, issues or problems, that if that ends up being someone dies, that was their contract. The murdered and the murderer have a contract. Now that is a concept that's spoken in different ways now. I know Carolyn Mays has a book called Sacred Contracts, and it's part of the lexicon of these days. But my experience of it and my ultimate deepest trust about it is because that's what my son shared with me about his death, was the culmination, the signing off on, if you will, a contract. So if you would like to hear more about that story, I'd be happy to share it.